Well, welcome back to another episode. And this is going to be a fun one to cover another, well, countdown to Lights Out. As WSeries Breakdown presents Countdown to Lights Out. And this is a big one for you as we will cover the practice. We'll break down practice and we will break down one and only qualifying, a crazy qualifying session. Then, of course, we'll get into even more for the weather. What's the weather going to be like tomorrow for the race? And that is where everything is going to be interesting, even for the F1 side. But we are talking about the one and only W Series here. As well, there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to really break down, get through the top three, the top five almost in the whole session, especially for qualifying, and where everybody lined up from practice to that qualifying heading into it, and where other drivers thought about different things. Because of course we'll start off in qualifying, or we'll start off here in practice very shortly. So let's get into it here as we mute up the music. But a big thing to really talk about, big thing to really just kind of get started from is none other than practice. How did everybody shape up there? And it was going to be a sunny practice. The first series out on into racing was the W Series this weekend, was the W Series for this Friday before FP1, or it was close, it was around that time, but I mean, even the announcers, Naomi Schiff, talking as well to Isla Agrin, talking about that, well, they're the ones pretty much cleaning this racetrack, meaning laying down the rubber, being able to get this track from green to not, well, kind of moderately used, so that when F1 or F2 comes right out afterwards, which I believe it was F1, that they'll have more grip to set laps. Remember, this is all going down to going down to F1, and then they end the session on Friday for qualifying. So it's a lot of things like that, and just it's going to be very interesting to see how everything kind of kicks off and starts up, especially for the race. Again, the rain's going to wipe everything out, basically, if it happens, and if it rains all day tomorrow in Hungary, or a couple of hours in Hungary. So then, with that being said, what is Sunday's race for F1 going to look like for all of that? So it's just a lot of what ifs, especially going into the weekend's race, and how, going by the forecast of how everything could potentially shake up. But Bikesgevisser, off of practice, was able to took her strong form from France, where she scored her first W Series pole position into Friday morning's practice in Hungary, leading the way by 0.2 of a second from Sarah Moore. So that was a big thing for Sarah Moore. Leading the way by 0.2 of a second from Sarah Moore, Jamie Chadwick was a further 0.4 adrift in third, despite completing fewer laps, 9, than any driver due to a suspected clutch issue. Emma Kamalainen spun at turn 1 in the closing stages, but still finished the session in 4th. Nerea Marti was 5th, and Jessica Hawkins 6th, although the later was given a 5-minute time penalty midway through the 30-minute session for exceeding track limits, something several drivers were warned about. The top 12 were separated by less than a second, and there were only 3.5 tenths between Jamie in 3rd and Abby Eaton in 12th. British fans can watch the 6th race of the 2022 W Series season live from Hungary on Sky Sports F1, Sky Showcase, and Sky Sports Mix from 13:15 BST on Saturday, 30th of July, which with qualifying live on Sky Sports F1 at 18:10 BST on Friday, 29th of July. Highlights of the race will be on Channel 4 at 1400 BST on Saturday, the 31st of July. WSeries practice session will be streamed live globally across our YouTube channel from 10:50 BST on Friday, July 29th. The action, well, either way, y'all don't need to know about that because everything from this Friday has already wrapped up. We're basically just breaking it down, talking about what happened for, a quicker breakdown than everybody just watching it to get you hyped for the Saturday race. This is all just to really break it down and give people this kind of pre-race vibe before all the drivers drop their clutch and go. Drop a gear, as they say, and disappear, because of course those 5 lights go out tomorrow and all of a sudden it's going to be racing. There is a potential to where these drivers might not see 5 red lights and instead will be behind a safety car before they are scheduled to race due to how wet the track is. If there's too much standing water, that's what they could potentially do, since F1 doesn't have a system where they can bring out a couple of jet dryers and blow off the excess water. But yeah, it was very interesting. I'll give you all the details on the top 18 drivers who were able to practice and what their times were. Do this every week. And it's interesting as well. We mentioned the 5-second time penalty real quick before we actually get into that. The 5-minute time penalty for Jessica Hawkins. It worked out perfectly because I saw when she did go into pit lane, her crew members instantly went to her tires and lowered the tire pressure and kind of changed her car. And she later talked to Naomi Schiff after the session and said, "That didn't hurt me at all. That was planned. It was planned for me to go out. It was planned for me to actually come into pit lane, get all my adjustments figured out, taken care of, and then go right back out onto the racetrack after around 5 minutes or so to be able to practice a little bit more. Yes, I didn't do as many laps as everybody else, but at that same time, that was my game plan." That's what Jessica Hawkins talked to Naomi Schiff about, which was very interesting to see that was her game plan all along. But the top 18 were as followed, and everybody were very close to each other. Weitske Visser 1:43.631 was her time. Then it was Sarah Moore, Jamie Chadwick, Emma Kimmelainen, and Neria Marti. All the way down to 7 tenths was Neria Marti, 6 tenths, 0.660 was Kimmelainen, and 0.600 was Jamie Chadwick, and then Moore was just about 2 tenths off of Weitske Visser in that practice session, just for that top 5. Then, of course, you had Jessica Hawkins, 0.715 off the leader, which was 6th place. Belen Garcia, 0.726 off of the leader. Weitske Visser again, and Alice Powell in 8th place, 0.757 off of, or 745 actually, off the leader, Weitske Visser. And then, once again, Fabian Volvend actually, 0.757 off of Weitske Visser. Then Tereza Babakova, 0.904 off in 10th place of Weitske Visser. This is all once again in practice. And then after that, Martha Garcia, 9.944 in this. And, well, I mean, it just goes on from there. Abby Eaton, 12th, pulling 13th. That was a bit of a shock to see pulling in 13th after practice. Thomas Selly, 14th, and Chloe Chambers, 15th. A good practice session from her. First time she had ever been on this racetrack. First time. Again, she's from America. Her first year out of karts, she jumps straight into Formula 4 and also runs a bit of Formula Regional too. And that was last year, basically. And so she jumped very quickly into that Formula 3, Formula 3, basically, race car. And the first year that the Formula 3 US was opened up, it was called that. It was called Formula 3, and then all of a sudden it got backed by the FIA, so all of a sudden they had to change it to Formula Regional, which is exactly what the European series was going to be called, which was Formula Regional Europe. So it was Formula Regional USA. So all of that kind of built in to a perfect, just a perfect um, perfect storm for Chloe Chambers to be able to get a spot in. So we continue on, and then Emily De Hughes, Juju Noda, and Bianca Bustamante. That was 16th, 17th, 18th. They were about 2 seconds off pace from the leaders. Not too shocking with the bottom three, or bottom four really, with Chloe Chambers, De Hughes, and Noda and Bustamante. All of them are rookies, and all of them, it's their first time at this racetrack. Them trying to find their pace, trying to find the rhythm of this track. And I've noticed, especially with that, they even Bustamante to Noda and Chloe Chambers, they really start to figure it out. After that practice session, they're like, okay, I know where I can gain more time here because I've learned this track a little bit more now in that race pace, sort of. And so now I can really just focus on, okay, improve here, improve there. We got this data, and this is where I'm slow at, but I know where I can kind of find it without abusing the track limits, because this track limits here at Hungary can be difficult for drivers to maneuver around and not run wide, especially off the back straight, where it's very easy to do that because you come off of this corner off the left-hander, and the car sometimes you get a lot of oversteer, and sometimes it just wants to go wide. And that's what I've noticed off of watching it from TV. I'm not a driver myself, but I've noticed that from the TV, and so when they just oversteer it can push that car out wide and really not only hurt their lap time, hurt their tires, but also the FIA says you can't do that. Which is, of course, understandable. You don't want drivers abusing track limits, but when they're able to find time and not abuse track limits, that is a perfect lap for them. So we move on now, talking about lap times, talking about where everybody's going to end up here, and we're going to get along the line with qualifying. Qualifying was very intense. It seemed like Jamie Chadwick still had that struggle with her clutch, so she was a little bit concerned about that, I'm sure. And it was very interesting listening to it and watching it, where they were talking about, Alex Jacques was talking about it with Naomi Schiff and Billy Monger, talking about how there were, just drivers, again, track limits. That's what they were kind of grilling. But that's where we learned about what Naomi Schiff told Alex Jacques and what she talked to Jessica Hawkins about. And speaking about Hawkins, she ended up finishing her qualifying run in 10th position. So right in the midfield, especially where you don't necessarily know what's going to happen with that rain. So a very good qualifying session from her, in my eyes. Of course, she wanted to do better, but 10th place, being able to most likely make up spots, it's going to be interesting to see. But Alice Powell, her first pole position of this year, she gets it, and it's right at Hungary. She did look like she was going to end up doing a very good job at this racetrack, and sure enough, was able to. And how, practice finished, and she was 8th place. But I'm sure, if you were to talk to her about before practice or after practice, before qualifying, she would have said, yeah, I can gain here, I can gain there. She's talking to engineers, and that's a cool thing about this. Engineers, only the academy drivers get to keep the same engineers race after race after race. The rest of the drivers, so that they don't gain that advantage with a certain engineer, have to switch out their engineer. So most likely at the end, you might get another engineer. Actually, I take that back. Since there's only about 2 that keep their engineers, there's still 16 different engineers. So you will never keep that same engineer for the weekend, at least for this year. I think last year they was the only year that they got to keep the same engineer, so it was a little bit different then. But moving on again, that something new. So every single weekend you have to gain trust with a new engineer if you didn't have them maybe the year before or in 2019, which again that is a possibility. But Alice Powell got pole position. It was her time, or I don't want to say the L word, which is luck, because that was not a lucky lap in at all. She had this pace coming into it. Eighth place, we already knew she was doing a fantastic job being right there. And then coming down the line was Bike Officer, only 2/10 off of your pole sitter. Neria Marti third place with a .323. Marta Garcia, .342 off of the leader. Chadwick, fifth place. This is where it got a little interesting. Chadwick having a little bit of a struggle crossing the start-finish straight and not being able to improve her time. Qualifies in the fifth position, so this would be the second time this season that she is not starting on the front row. Even though last week she did get pole position, but it demoted her 2 spots due to her crossing the pit line, and we don't know necessarily what Jamie Chadwick had to say after qualifying, since she did not qualify in the top 3. Going down, though, was Abby Pulling. Belen Garcia, 7th place, .669, and then Pulling was .503. So Pulling besting her time because she was in 13th position, I believe. Yes, indeed, 13th position after practice, so found some time, found the speed, found her lap, and was able to put in a lot of fast sectors throughout her qualifying time. So able to pull it together for a 6th place right behind Jamie Chadwick. If she can have a good start, then there is a good possibility that she'll be able to push up there. Now, I do want to mention this, actually, as we take a timeout on listing all the drivers. Beitzke Vissers in 3rd position in the championship. Not too far behind Abby Pulling on points. Of course, it's a 70-point lead for Jamie Chadwick. And, well, it is possible the WSeries script team said, hey, Jamie, we got to give her a bad car. This is all a joke that I'm saying right here, because it's completely not true that it most likely happened. She just had bad qualifying. Most likely she'll be right up there in the race, having a chance to fight for the race win. I mean, we saw it in Miami. We've seen it last week in France, being able to get 2 great restarts and overtaking Beitzke Visser for the provisional race victory that ended up happening. But yeah, moving down, we had Belen Garcia, we had Emma Kimmelainen, Fabian Volvind. But yeah, I just wanted to bring it up because Visser's not too far behind from Abby Pulling in that sort of best of the rest category. As 70-point lead. Its 70-point lead is going to be very difficult for any driver to be able to catch up and pass Jamie Chadwick for the race championship in the end. When it's all said and done in Mexico City, Mexico, as it stands, that's where we will finish up the season. We already had one track change, which I did break down yesterday in this podcast, which was they changed from Japan to Singapore. Instead of going to Japan, they will head to Singapore, and the Singapore race promoters have been talking to WSeries, trying to get everything sorted so that they're able to stay there and race, and that it will be the biggest thing. And I'm looking forward to that as well, since we had such a great run at Miami. But getting back on track here, we talked about it. Belen Garcia, 7th place, .669, off of the leading pole time of 1 minute 42.986. That was from Alice Powell. Then Jessica Hawkins, or check that, Belen Garcia. So then Emma Kimmelainen, .763 off in 8th place. That's a driver that we did see up through the field last week. Then Fabian Volvind, 0.817, and Jessica Hawkins, 0.826 off of the provisional or off the pole time. Of course, that's your top 10. That's who, if it were to stay like this for the race, that's who would have points. That's what I'm trying to say here. Sarah Moore, 0.961 in 11th position after being able to top in second in practice. Falls down the order and outside the top 10, looking to try and make up positions. Can she do the unthinkable, which is get to the top 10 from where she's starting on the grid? Well, it will be a possibility if indeed they do have to start on wet weather racing tires. That's going to be the exciting part. Fabia Volvin, 9th place. Hawkins, 10th. Moore, 11th. Babakova, Teresa Babakova, 1 second off pace in 12th from the pole time. Abby Eaton, not her best qualifying run, cannot repeat what she did last week, which was being able to qualify very well. 1.372 off the pole time, 13th position. Chloe Chambers, 1.515 off of the pole time in 14th position. So the best of the rookies is what I'm going to say, as even though, yes, Pulling is technically a rookie this season, it is her first full season in the W Series, but she had prior experience in this race car before racing in this series due to racing at Silverstone and racing at Circuit of the Americas, but first time here, so Abby Pulling doing a good job. But once again, Chloe Chambers, the best of Tomaselli, Noda, DeHues, and Bustamante. Bruna Tomaselli, she was here last year, wasn't able to gain time as 1.572 off of the pole time in 15th. Noda, 1.865 off of her off of the pole time from Alice Powell. Then Emily DeHues, same deal, 2.141 off of the pole time, and Bustamante, 3.180. And it's interesting, and I also want to say this too, I do kind of, I'm very critical about these rookies, about these drivers, but I have to remember, especially with Bianca Bustamante, this is a tough task for her, coming right out of go-karts, right out of karts, into a Formula 3 car. This is Bustamante. He's coming straight into a Formula 3 car. First ever laps, run on the Formula 3 car were probably practice, if I had to guess. She hasn't really had that experience as other drivers have. So this is her rookie season in general of this, and she is in the Academy car, so she will be back here next year. And, she gets to skip Formula 4 in a sense, which is where you learn a lot of stuff and where you learn how to be less aggressive in a sense, not making, moves that you wouldn't necessarily make as, a rookie driver. Again, covering Formula 4 last year, watching all those races at Circuit of the Americas with the SCCA Formula 4 series, you see how aggressive the drivers are trying to make passes, trying to make these moves, and ending up getting, penalties for it afterwards and things like that. So it's something that Bustamante, is getting used to. Juju Noda technically is getting used to, even though Juju Noda, and W Series did say something on the broadcast that was wrong, and it was this, that Juju Noda has come straight out of karts into F3. That is Bustamante. Into this W Series, Juju Noda has had some F4, some Formula 4 experience with getting, with the likes of downforce, with the likes of shifting up to 6 gears at least, and having, those certain adjustments that aren't too much. The Ligier chassis as well. Or maybe the Tatis chassis, actually. I take that back. In Europe, it's the Tatis chassis. And so she raced in the Formula 4 Danish series. She also raced once in the Ligier chassis in the US F4 United States, as you would find her name on one of the F4 US timesheets. and she did. I believe she signed up for it. Might not have done too much. And I believe she did at least one race. But my point is, has some prior experience, at least in a Formula 4 car. Yes, she's still very young at this stage. I believe she's around 17, 18 years of age, something like that, and is still going to race in Formula 3 or race in the W Series here, and then come back next year and hopefully be even better than she once was a year ago, with just more skill and learning a lot. And that's all it is for these rookies, is being able to learn, getting to that next step in their career to be better and to have a chance to fight for a title, fight for, top 10, fight for a top 5, and then fight for their first podium and go on to win a race. So it's all that balance of checking off those boxes. Where are you now? What can you do for that next step? Because again, we go back to it. I talked about it yesterday, but Juju Noda being able to, she was proud of herself yesterday, or proud of herself last week, I should say, where trying to get to it, not July 4th, she said it was a much better weekend in Paul Ricard race, especially in qualifying. I hope to have a better race in next week. And she, I believe, finished 13th position, if I'm not mistaken, last week out in France. So she's trying to look for that as well. She's going to have to pass a couple more cars. But again, there's a possibility of safety cars that can happen. There were 2 last week, and I think there could potentially be one, especially the wet race. Last time that the W Series had a wet weather race where it was kind of full, but they did start on slicks, was when they did go out into Germany. And we had that famous incident with a W Series driver, none other than Alice Powell. And then it was an ex-W Series driver from Canada, blanking on her name right now, but dove up the inside, making contact with her side of the car, and all of a sudden taking both of them out of the race. And that was Alice Powell. And this is big for Alice Powell. We haven't even gotten to what she had to say after this race, but after qualifying, but we've heard what she said. And Alice Powell has said so much of, it's just this year reminds me of my rookie campaign in the W Series, which was 2019. That first year where everything just seemed to go bad for me. It was just a lot of bad luck. And it is true. And so for her to be able to get these results only boosts up her confidence and gives her that opportunity to say, yes, this is what I want. This is going to be big. I'm starting on pole. I have a chance to win this. So now, given with that, perfect segue into Alice Powell claiming pole. Alice Powell claims her first pole position of the season. 29th of July 2022 is when this article was released. Alice Powell secured her first pole position of the 2022 W Series season in a frantic qualifying session for the 6th race of the year at Hungary. The 2021 W Series runner-up took the 3rd pole of her W Series career, more than a year after her 2nd at Silverstone, UK last July, when she posted a lap of 142.986 with 2 minutes remaining of a dramatic session during which the lead changed hands in numerous occasions. Alice Powell is now perfectly placed to win the 5th W Series race of her career, and first since she claimed victory at Circuit Zandvoort, Netherlands in September 2021. That's right, that was her last victory. The Briton, who is currently 6th in the championship standings, was 0.2 of a second faster than Bijtske, who will start on the front row for the 2nd straight race, having scored her maiden W Series pole position at Circuit Paul Ricard, France last weekend. Nerea Marti has found memories of the Hungaroring where she stood on a W Series podium for the first time 12 months ago, and the Spaniard will start Saturday's race where she none other than finished last year's in third. She will be joined on the second row by compatriot Marta Garcia. Jamie Chadwick is chasing an 8th straight W Series victory this weekend, but the reigning double champion will have to do it from 5th on the grid. Her lowest starting position since the first race of the 2021 season in Austria, where she qualified 8th. Jamie leads Abby Pulling by 70 points at the top of the championship standings, and that pair will line up alongside each other on the third row after Abby qualified 6th. Belen Garcia, Emma Kimmeline, Fabian Volvind, and Jessica Hawkins completed the top 10, who were separated by less than a second. After a third of the 30-minute qualifying session, Weizke-Visser led Emma Kimmeline by 4/100ths of a second. They were followed by Jamie before just a few seconds later. Alice moved into the top 3. The pair improved on the next runs when Alice's effort was 2/100ths faster than Jamie's. Emma briefly leapfrogged Alice and Jamie before her lap time was deleted by exceeding track limits. However, the Finn, who enjoys great support in Hungary, improved again on her next run to lead Alice by 6/100ths at the halfway stage when the entire field pitted for fresh tires. With rain forecasted during Saturday's race in support of the Formula One Magyar Nagydic 2022, which means the Formula One Hungarian Grand Prix, a good qualifying result was even more important than usual at the tight Hungaroring, where overtaking is notoriously difficult. That prompted a frantic second half of the session where the drivers pushed the limits in a bid to improve their times. Less than half a second separated the top 10 with 6 minutes remaining. Nerea Marti was the first to break out of the pack, beating Emma's time by 2/10. She was followed over the line by Jamie, who knocked a further 2/10 off Nerea's time to hit the front. Beitska went quicker before Nerea went faster. Still, only four Beitska to set 3 purple sectors to regain the lead. With 2 minutes remaining, the yellow flags were waving in Sector 3, where Bruna Tomaselli and Bianca Bustamante made contact, and that incident was being investigated by the stewards after the session. Despite that, Alice took 2/10 off Beitska's best to improve, or to be the first driver to post a time below 1:43, and that proved good enough to secure pole position. Earlier in the day, Beitska took her strong form from France, where she scored her first W Series pole position, into Friday morning's practice in Hungary, leading the way by 2/10 of a second from Sarah. Jamie was a further 4/10 adrift in third, despite completing fewer laps, 9, than any driver due to a clutch issue. So there you go. There's your answer. It was a clutch issue still by Jamie Chadwick. Reason why she wasn't able to run as many laps as everybody else, and wasn't able to post a fast enough time to compete for the top 3, let alone pole position. Earlier in the day, Beitska took her strong form from... Okay. I think we already... No, we did not. Earlier in the day, Beitska took her strong form from France, where she scored her first W Series pole position to Friday morning's practice. Yep, okay, so we did read that. Than any other driver. Emma spun at turn 1 in the closing stages, but still finished the session in 4th. Nerea was 5th, and Jessica Hawkins 6th, although the later was given a 5-minute time penalty midway through the 30 minutes. So, top 12 were separated by less than a second, and there were only 3.5 tenths between Jamie and in 3rd and Abby. Don't know why they included the practice results kind of there, meaning in the closing stages, but for exceeding track limits, something several drivers were warned about. Yeah, we kind of read that in the practice rundown from them. But the top 12 were separated by less than a second, and there were only 3.5 tenths between Jamie and 3rd and Abby Eaton in 12th. So that is something to really take into consideration. 3.5 tenths from Jamie in 3rd. Abby Eaton 12th. Again, this is from practice. We're reading something from practice. That right there did not need to be in this article. Emma spun at turn 1 in the closing stages, but still finished the session in 4th. Nerea was 5th and Jessica 6th. And then, although the later, that happened in practice. Did that happen again and I missed it? Doesn't matter. What did all the drivers have to say about this? And this is where it gets interesting. What did Alice Powell have to say about her her pole position this year at Hungary? It's really good to get the first pole position for Bristol Street Motors team. They have worked so hard in that awning. We made quite a few changes from free practice to now, and I think all the changes helped. I'm really happy, but tomorrow it's going to be wet if you go by the forecast. So we're going to have to see, and it's going to be pretty interesting. We were all right here last year, even though Jamie Chadwick had the legs on the rest of us in the race, but I think it was fairly close in qualifying. I just need to get a good start tomorrow. But you can't plan or predict because the weather keeps changing so much. I've looked at it 3 times and it has said different things. I think it's just a case of turning up tomorrow, looking down, seeing what it's like, and off we go. I mean, Alice said it perfectly. What more can you do besides check the radar, check the weather before you go out? Look at the sky. Look, is there liquid falling from the sky? And then look down on the ground. Is the track wet? Has it already rained? So there's not much that these drivers can do. They just have to see at first and then step in the race car, and that's it. Make their decision then, and the FIA will decide whether or not it will be a wet start or a dry start. And that is what, that's all they can say. If it's a wet weather start, they'll expect all the drivers to be on wet weather tires. But it is up to them, and really they don't have to, because these teams don't have to use two different types of compounds for their tires. But here's what Bikes had to say after her second place. So she'll be starting on the front row. Bikes said, "It was a good session. The track was completely different this morning, which is always the case after the F1 cars have driven, so you have to adapt to that. I'm happy to be on the front row. Let's see what the weather will do tomorrow, but I'm sure it is going to be a good race. I don't mind whether it's dry or wet. The track itself is fine physically, but mentally it is a tough track and is very easy to make a mistake. And AMRT said, I love this track. It was a bit difficult because I had problems at the rear of the car as I had a lot of oversteer. We changed a lot of things before qualifying, but I still had oversteer. I'm happy with qualifying. I need to get points to be in second position in the championship because Jamie Chadwick is too far away. I'll try tomorrow to take as many points as possible. Let's focus on tomorrow, and maybe it will be raining. And of course, for the rest of the standings, if you want to look at the standings yourself, if you want to look at the timing and scoring, it is all on the WSeries website. And then, of course, tomorrow's race. Real quick, British fans can watch the sixth race of the 2022 WSeries season live from Hungary on Sky Sports F1 Sky Showcase and Sky Sports Mix from 13:15 BST on Saturday, 30th of July. Highlights of the race will be on Channel 4 at 1400 BST on Sunday, the 31st of July. And for me, and telling you all where to watch it if you live in America, will be on ESPNU. What time, though, will that happen? So we look at it. The races, there we go. Going on to Budapest, Hungary. We click on it, open it up. With 15 hours till the lights will go out, whether it's on the pace car or whether it's on as a standing start. It will be broadcasted on ESPN as we find out more. My time, which is America, Chicago. The 30th of July, we will have it at 7:40 a.m. to 8:15 a.m. So that is what time the race will be broadcast live. And once again, it will be broadcasted on the ESPN networks, ESPNU. You can also find it on ESPN, Watch ESPN app to be exact, or the ESPN app. And you can go on and probably sign in with a service provider from there. And once it is complete, you can watch it on demand on the ESPN app yourself, as well as that will probably be the only place to watch it. But should be extremely fun. Cannot wait for it because it's going to be so different. We look at, again, the Hungary weather. And the forecast, it does say it is 24 degrees Celsius at the moment. And it does say it's supposed to start to rain. And this is interesting. Thunderstorm, not just rain, but it will be a thunderstorm. We'll get up to 33 degrees. 12 midnight their time. It's supposed to be raining at the moment. 3 a.m. Still raining. And Sunday at 6 a.m. it's supposed to rain. So the Saturday is the biggest thing. They are saying Saturday at 6 a.m. precipitation is supposed to happen. Of course, I want to see what it will say. A little bit later on. Saturday at 8 a.m. it will say thunderstorm. So that is not the time that the race will be starting. That is what I'm trying to get to. The precipitation. Okay, now I've figured it out. Race probably around 3 p.m., somewhere around that time. Or just after maybe 6 p.m. or so. 73% chance of showers. So most likely it will rain. Most likely. We'll see. We'll see if it happens. We'll see if it doesn't happen. But that is the predictions from there. Oh, yeah, predictions for me. I do expect to see one safety car at least. One safety car is my prediction. And then for the top of everybody, your first place, I think Alice Powell will be able to keep first place and end up winning, getting the win. I think it will be the same case as last week for, sadly, for Bikeskvisser. She'll move down, probably get past, and end up finishing 5th, potentially 6th position with pulling, making up a spot. And if, take that back, Visser will drop down to 6th. Pulling will finish in 5th. Chadwick 4th, with both the Spaniards, Marta Garcia and Nedia Marti, getting a podium. Nedia Marti this time will get 2nd. Marta Garcia 3rd. Powell will win. And like I said, pulling 5th. Visser 6th. With Chadwick 4th. So then Bell and Garcia, I think it will stay the same for the rest. Bell and Garcia will stay in 7th. Kimmelheinen will get passed by Volven for 8th. And then Hawkins will not be able to close the deal on Kimmelheinen and finish in 10th. Moore will not score points, as well as Babakova. Everybody else will stay the same. Chloe Chambers will maybe be able to get, I'll say Chloe Chambers gets into 12th position. That's where she'll finish. Juju Noda will be able to make up 2 positions to 14th. Tom Sully 15th, with De Hughes, Bustamante being able to finish in those same positions. The safety car, though, I think will happen in the back of the field, and that is where De Hughes will actually go off, and we will have that all 18 drivers. Well, 17 drivers will end up finishing this race. That is my prediction. Podium prediction, like I said, top 3, Powell, Marta Garcia will be my podium prediction. But yeah, that's going to wrap it up. I'll wrap this thing up and be able to post this live once again on YouTube. Or not live, but we'll post this on YouTube as well. And thank you also very much for watching. Remember, if you are on YouTube, if you do like this content, feel free to hit that subscribe button and give it a like, a thumbs up. Always helps me out. And I mean, I love to make this type of content. Love to get you all excited for this series, W Series. Of course, the ladder series are always fun to just be able to cover as much as possible. But yeah, thank you all so very much for watching this. I'll see you all next time. Goodbye. Adios.